Is this Chevy pickup tough enough to move a 95-pound grandmother and this 65-ton home? Let's watch. There she goes, a 3/4-ton Chevy pickup with available 350 V8, automatic transmission, 410 axle, dual exhaust, oil coolers, and full-time four-wheel drive. Get a tough Chevy pickup. Your grandmother would be proud of it. Chevy trucks, built to stay tough.
Good afternoon and welcome back to American Outdoors. I am replacing the steering gearbox on this 1985 K10 Silverado, and I'm going to show you the tools you're going to need, the procedures to get it out and back in, and we'll give you a couple hints and tips on the way. This isn't going to be a very long video, but anyway, this is for the Saginaw steering gearboxes on all Squarebody four-wheel drives from 1973 through 1987 and then up until 1991 on the Suburbans and the Blazers K5s. But anyway, this one is plumb wore out, and I say that because this is just a project truck that's way down the line to get done. But when we take this out on the road just to test drive repairs, there is about at least 1/3 of movement in the steering wheel, either left or right, before you will realize any change in the steering of the truck. It's beyond dangerous. It's unnerving. So it's wore out. It's time to go. What we're going to replace it with is another Saginaw, used. I think this came out of a 76 K10, one of the corpses that we picked out of our boneyard. Anyway, these are, like I said, they're all pretty much identical. I'm going to use the control, the steering arm, pitman arm, off of the 76, and I'll explain why shortly. But again, these are all pretty much identical. Now's the time when if you're going to replace yours, check your rag joint. If you need to get a rag joint, they're pretty easily found online. I don't know, $25, $30, but now would be the time to do that. So the tools you're going to need, parts you're going to need to change this out. If your truck is some early 80s and beyond, it's going to be metric. If it's say an 81 or an 80 and before, it'll be standard size wrenches and tools. But I'm going to be using an impact, 16 millimeter socket, 22 millimeter socket, a swivel, half-inch drive extension,
an 18 millimeter wrench,
an 11 millimeter socket with a long 3/8 extension, a pickle fork, a decent sized hammer, a pry bar, and of course you're going to need some power steering fluid to replace and help lead the system when you're done. So I will share with you my order of removing this gearbox. It's not written in stone. Nowhere in the Bible can you find this. It's just how I do it. So first thing I'm going to do
is remove the 11 millimeter bolt that holds the steering shaft to the gearbox.
Okay, next I'm going to pry the shaft away from the nose of the gearbox. Now sometimes these will slide right off, sometimes they don't. Farther up the column there's a pin that goes through the side of the column, and it's designed to protect the driver in an accident. In other words, if you are in your truck and you're involved in a front-end collision, that pin will shear and will slide up the shaft somewhat, so that will help prevent you from further injury inside the cab. Anyway, what I'm getting at is you don't need to push this all the way off. If it's not going to come off easily, just leave it backed off a little bit. And after we loosen the gearbox, we can slide it off from the front. So using my 18mm wrench, I'm going to slide this onto the pressure and the return lines. And that broke free pretty nicely. All right. They don't always go like that. If you need to, a little torch, a little PB blaster can help. Now this one still has a bracket right there, which tells me this steering box has probably never been changed. And that looks like it's a 13mm, and that should probably come loose too, just to make sure that you can get this away and you can remove and install the new gearbox without any interference from these lines. So as you're loosening up your pressure and your return lines, power steering fluid is going to be coming out of the gearbox. So you should have a catch pan underneath. Because I'm going to be working under there, I just use an old gallon milk jug and I cut the bottom third of it off, and that does nicely. If you want to recycle this, I'm going to use fresh fluid, but it'll just keep it from getting all over the ground. Okay, it's pretty difficult to get my tripod under here and work by myself, so I couldn't show you what I was doing, but I just took my 1/2-inch impact 22mm socket and loosened this castle nut right there. Now they do have a cotter pin inside, which you will need to remove, but 22mm or your SAE equivalent castle nut. Just remove this. And we're going to get a pickle fork and we will split that control arm, that steering arm, from the suspension. Since I'm working solo, spaces are tight, and I'm the head cook and bottle washer, I'm going to show you, before I remove the other one, where your 4 mounting bolts are. And again, on the older square bodies, these are 5/8, and they have this sleeve here too. There's 4 right here. 16mm on the later models. Depending on your circumstances, if you're working flat on your back, the chassis is been stripped down so you've got more access. All of those things will determine how well you can get to these. They're not a big deal. They're kind of tedious, but there shouldn't be any reason why you can't get these with just a basic deep well socket. But you have one located here, one there, and up here. And this is where the frame is. And also, when we get this removed, that's when you want to check the frame that this mounts to, because it is a common issue for these K-bodies, including the Suburbans and the Cheyennes, Blazers, for the frame to crack where this mounts, and they do sell aftermarket plates that you can attach to your frame and then reattach the gearbox to correct that issue. Okay, now I'm under the car and I'm going to give you some reference. Okay, here's the bumper going along the frame below the core support. You reach the front cross member. Here is your first bolt right there. Looks like it's tucked away pretty good, but you can get to that. Okay, that one's out. So we go underneath where the fan is, and you will see there is the left hand lower bolt is right behind this power steering, right there. Okay? And then the right hand bolt, bear with me folks, is over here. My finger's on it, but I'm not going to get a shot of it. It's not as hard as it looks. You can't see it, but it's accessible. I wanted to show you guys something. This is the old steering gearbox right here. And then here's the old steering arm, pitman arm. You saw all the play with this when I had it on the truck, how it was moving back and forth. One thing you can do, if you're not sure where the problem is I could have pulled this arm right here and just checked the splines. And to me, I know it's hard to see here in the camera, there is wear. And the splines seem to be okay on this. However, it could be as simple as a steering arm that has failed. You could also have splines that are worn on the gearbox. The gearbox itself could be failing, causing some play with the bearings as well. But this is worth checking out. This one I'm probably going to rebuild, and that might be a video later. I'm not sure. But, you know, like I said, I could have just changed this steering arm and then took it down the road and seen how much of a difference there was. For the purposes of this video, I was going to replace everything. So now, it's time to put this steering gearbox back onto the truck. Now, besides making sure that your front wheels are straight on your truck before you remove the gearbox, make sure also that your gearbox is centered before you install it. And that's as simple as just counting the turns to the left, then counting the turns to the right, and then center your steering wheel. On this one, I believe it's about 1 3/4 rotations.